Sugar, a wolf in sheep's clothing. Hello, invincible friends. I am Logo, and I want to share with you the logical steps we can take if we have a major disease and how to face it while continuing to attend to the treatments and recommendations of your doctors. Common table sugar is a type of sugar called sucrose, is the union of a glucose molecule and a fructose molecule. Its formula is C12H22011, means 12 carbons, 22 hydrogens, and 11 oxygens. Every time we serve ourselves sugar, we consume 50% of metabolic problems because, as we have already mentioned on other occasions, fructose damages the liver and mitochondria of cells in a systematic way. Much of the world's sucrose production is based on sugarcane. Once the cane is harvested, the juices are extracted by mechanical pressure. From there, its refining begins. Clarify the mixture. Sulfur dioxide is introduced to make the mixture more alkaline. Powdered lime is applied to separate the honey from the cane from the solids. A cationic polymer and phosphoric acid are applied to purify it further. In the crystallization stage, alcohol with sucrose crystals is applied to accelerate the crystallization process in the vacuum chamber. There it comes out wet, where it is taken to the drying tunnel. After superheating, it is cooled to be packaged. The end result we know is the grainy white crystal without molasses. Molasses contains iron 13%, potassium, sodium, calcium, magnesium, zinc. It also contains niacin, vitamin B3, pantothenic acid, vitamin B5, and riboflavin, vitamin B2. Very important for microbial growth in the gut. It is interesting that the nutrients are removed from the final product. Perhaps it is a matter of pragmatism, since the crystalline presentation is very easy to store and use. Maybe you draw your own conclusions. It has been proven that sugar molecules, having been freed from the minerals that were bound and associated with it, end up being counterproductive, since these free radicals have a capacity to react or associate with another compound. In fact, when they come across the minerals that are in the body, they tend to associate with them. In short, they demineralize us. A common example, called glycation, occurs when it reacts with the collagen of the cells, hardening it, which reduces cell flexibility and accelerates the appearance of wrinkles in the skin, and that is called aging. The amino acid L-carnitine and alpha-lipoic acid can be taken to reduce glycation effects. It also tends to be associated with calcium in the bones, accelerating osteoporosis processes. Sugar is not to blame. It is also the preferred food of bacteria and microorganisms in general, especially those that harm the body, as it helps fermentation. In the military strategy to win battles, an army tries to destroy the enemy's supply line so that it cannot grow and thus facilitate its victory. Think about that. What do viruses live on in the body? COVID? Dengue? Fungus like Candida? Another very common example is that of dental caries. Lesions caused by imbalance of biofilm and loss of minerals due to bacterial acids in the teeth. Streptococcus mutans, or karyogenic bacteria, needs the sugars in fermentable carbohydrates to grow in an unbalanced way and thus wreak havoc on us. As a child, I found it very interesting to read the chapter on the persistence of memory in the book Cosmos by Carl Sagan, where he describes the first steps of glucose digestion. It is impossible to consciously carry out such precise and complex processes, and we would starve to death if we could not consciously digest even an apple. What I believe with this is that an order is required for the processes to be correct and accurate. Remember, chaos, it is not synonymous with efficiency, and therefore it is the path of mistakes. It may even be that someone does well as the winner of the lottery. What we do not mention, the number of people who lost are always the majority. Myth: sugar gives energy. I quote Dr. Robert Lustig from New York, writer of the book Metabolical, The Calorie Myth. Can a calorie be part of a balanced diet? These are the words that protect the industry by holding consumers accountable for their ignorance and asserting that a calorie is a calorie when we eat. How you can test. If you eat 160 calories in almonds, how many calories do we actually absorb? The answer is 130 calories. Soluble fiber forms a gel that feeds the second barrier of the intestine, and non-soluble fiber, such as cellulose, blocks permeability in the intestine, preventing it from absorbing excess sugars. The 30 calories are the food of the bacterial flora of the intestine. Seen through an electron microscope, he says. No need to produce insulin, practically insulin to level glucose levels. The body has 10 trillion cells and 100 trillion bacteria living in the gut microbiota. Therefore, a calorie we eat is not an absorbed calorie. Insulin is the bad guy in the story as it manages chronic metabolic diseases. To lower glucose levels, it forces insulin to deposit it in the cells. The problems start with having a full tank. Myth about protein intake: if you eat too much, you can store it in your muscles. But if you exceed your body's needs, these amino acids are transformed into energy in the process of amino acid deamination, where they become organic acids, and these, in the liver's Krebs cycle, are transformed into ATP. All of these processes use a lot of energy to operate, and it's more than twice the cost of what is produced. But the body can't leave parts in used or purposeless swarming. If we compare the two processes consuming the same number of calories, it turns out that we do not produce the same number of ATP. So, a calorie is not a calorie actually absorbed, and that's not on the minds of most. Myth of calories and fats: a calorie of omega-3 fatty acids saves your life, and a calorie of trans fats take your life. They are the devil incarnate. They degenerate the liver and mitochondria, since the double bond of the carbons cannot be broken because you do not have an enzyme for that purpose. So different foods have different functions, that is, calorie is not the same as the other. Incredible. The myth that sugars are good. Glucose is the energy of life and fructose is poison, both of which have 4 calories per gram. Fructose is a toxin for the mitochondria. With food, it's not about how much we eat, but what the body does with what we eat. That's the most important thing. These 4 points break any concept of calories with respect to meals, but the food industry that washes its hands of legal responsibilities with such trickery and misleading concepts. Simple: money comes first. The maximum sugar we can eat daily is about 25 grams per day without ruining the liver. Actually, the enemy is fructose, which would be half 12.5 grams. The advantage of eating a fruit is that due to the fiber in it, a large amount of that sugar is no longer absorbed due to fiber, which is why industrial food is more harmful, because of the amount that the body absorbs. Every day we manufacture an average of 140 pounds of ATP, the energy of the mitochondria, but we don't eat that amount of food. Making energy is not an easy task. A mitochondria can do the work in the cell, but if it is overloaded, it can be damaged. The solution is to divide mitochondria within the cells. They have their own DNA. Now it is not the same to distribute the work among several mitochondria to do the same activity, which makes the process more energy efficient. It is important to do physical exercises to maintain the need in the body. If there is no need, then we will have fewer mitochondria per cell. Research professor Dr. Thomas Seyfried, the world's leading cancer treatment expert with more than 30 years of cutting-edge experience, says 80% of cancer is preventable because its origin stems from an energetic metabolic dysfunction of the mitochondria in the cell. And it is a metabolic disease linked to the process of energy disruption and not a genetic disease 100% demonstrated in research. This disruption is damage due to oxidation of the mitochondria's phosphorus capacity, degenerating the mitochondria's cytoplasm. Secondary damage can, in the much smaller case, come from aging, hypoxia, radiation, viruses like papilloma, among others, and other pollutants. The mitochondria are looking for an energy alternative to survive. Their response is fermentation, which is energy without oxygen. The mitochondria also regulate the cellular resting state by beginning to divide in a dysregulated way. When this mechanism becomes chronic, the so-called cancer appears in the form of tumors. Sugar is not a carcinogen, but excess sugar in the blood continuously leads to inflammatory causes of cells, which in turn damages mitochondria, is cause and effect. Unfortunately, research centers and institutes maintain that cancer is a genetic disease, since in reality they do not want things to change for their interests and economies, and on the other hand, the mystery of genetics makes the system of legal responsibility untouchable. After delivering the studies and repeating them by independent organizations, Dr. Dice, the denial is due to ideological dogmatism or cognitive difficulty. Any rational being can understand. New therapies such as immunotherapy are based on the somatic mutation of cancer, and this is a flawed theory. In fact, the numbers show that it's getting much worse. There's no improvement. According to the doctor, there is an immunotherapy based on high fever, and if it has been successful, he mentions Dr. William Colley, pioneer in these therapies. Long ago, injecting his patients with bacteria to cause high fevers in his patients, causing what he called a cytokine attack, and that the cancer was destroyed by the heat. He mentions that these immunotherapies are worth up to $300,000, or you take pyrogens and you get the same result for pennies of dollar. And cancer doesn't attack the immune system. Fever is a purification system. The dark secret of immunotherapy is to call it a hyperprogression disease, where many die from excessive fever and 20% survive and are cured. It is almost a mystical matter that one must have blind faith in the designs of the Lord. The real cure is metabolic therapy in order to heal. The management of cancer is to regulate glucose levels with a ketogenic diet to eliminate glucose fermentation, in addition to physical exercises to consume excess body glucose. Also, lower glutamine levels with medications, a deworming drug called N-bendazole and phenbendazole, since this amino acid that is fermented in parallel. Ergoglutamine and glucose fermentation are the fuel of cancer. This is how Dr. Thomas Seyfried concludes his conclusions. To conclude, obesity far surpassed cigarettes as a cause of cancer risk, and its great ally is sugar, and the devil of sugar is fructose. Let's think about people who drink alcohol socially. They are different from an alcoholic, right? An alcoholic has organ damage, especially in the liver, and suffers withdrawal because of its lack. In the same way, we must look at sugar in moderation so as not to fall into a framework of addiction, since it creates organic damage, especially to the liver. Amounts of dopamine are also released, leading to addiction. When someone who has insulin resistance and has trouble getting sugar into their cells, it causes the sugar to stick to enzymes and proteins, disrupting their functions. It is your decision to take the steps to move forward. If you liked the video and want to help spread the word, remember to click on the bell and subscribe to receive more information like this. Remember that step by step we can improve. The worst thing is to do nothing. Invincible friends, we see ourselves in the mirror